Donald Trump is telling us his plan for the 2026 midterms. He recently told the world that he was breaking news that he would prosecute his political enemies. He lamented not having the military seize ballots in 2020. He even said that, quote, we shouldn't even have an election in 2026. All of this while the Department of Justice seeks your most sensitive voter data, which is a critical step towards mass voter challenges and overturning the results of a free and fair election. Look, I've spent 30 years fighting for those elections in court. And in this episode, I'm going to walk you through what Trump is up to, why the legacy media is ignoring it, and what we must do to fight back. There are going to be a lot of twists and turns, and it's going to be a journey. So grab something to drink and sit back, because here we go. But before we get into it, subscribe to this channel to stay informed about how you can defend democracy. Donald Trump is not hiding his plans for 2026. In fact, he's saying it out loud. He's screaming it from the rooftops. He's going to the World Economic Forum in Davos, and he's telling us what he's doing. He's telling us that he is going to prosecute his political enemies. He is telling the New York Times on the record that he wishes he had seized the ballot boxes in 2020 by using the military. He told Reuters that he doesn't even think we should have elections in 2026. Over and over again, he is telling us that he fears what will happen when you go to the polls, when you have a chance to vote. If you have a chance to have your will, the will of the American people, prevail in the 2026 midterm elections. And from my standpoint, I keep hearing it and sounding the alarm bells. You know, if you're a subscriber to Democracy Docket, you know I am writing over and over again with each of these developments saying, hey, everyone, wake up. This is where we will be in 10 months. I don't mean 10 years. I mean 10 months from now. We will be facing an administration that is using an all-of-government approach to try to suppress the vote, to try to subvert the outcome of the elections, to try to rig the election, and potentially, if necessary, to try to just outright steal it. Now, if you think this is hyperbole, let's just go back. Let's just go back to 2020. You know, in 2020, I was sounding this same alarm. I started Democracy Docket in March of 2020. People don't know that, but it's a fact. I started it on March 5th, 2020, because I was worried that people were not paying attention to what Donald Trump was doing and what Donald Trump was saying he was going to do in that election. This is before the pandemic took over the country. This is before Donald Trump declared war on mail-in voting. I had already been a lawyer litigating these cases. I had been litigating in favor of voting rights. I had been trying to protect voters from Republican voter suppression almost my entire career. I sued the Trump campaign and Donald Trump and his supporters in the 2016 election run-up because I knew what they were up to then. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that that affected the outcome of the 2016 elections. Okay? Donald Trump won those elections. See, that's the difference between me and the lawyers for Donald Trump. I can say when Democrats lost elections. I was the general counsel to Hillary Clinton's campaign. We lost the 2016 election. Now, we won the popular vote. It was very close, but Donald Trump won the Electoral College. In 2004, I was the general counsel to John Kerry's campaign. There were a lot of people who thought that John Kerry should have contested that election in Ohio, that the election was stolen from him. I came forward and said, John Kerry lost the election. It was close. It came down to one state in Ohio, but we lost. See, I can say that because I have integrity, because I speak the truth. Look, I did a video in the days after the 2024 election saying that the people saying that the election was stolen from Kamala Harris, that wasn't true. As painful as it wasn't true. So look, I've got some credibility on this because I have been saying when Democrats win and I've been saying when Democrats lose. And I have been fighting these fights in the trenches. And in 2020, I warned people what Donald Trump was going to do, and he did it. He contested the outcome of that election in more than 60 lawsuits, and I was proud to represent Joe Biden and the Democratic Party in leading the charge against those lawsuits. And then when that didn't work for him, we know what happened next. He instigated a violent insurrection in the nation's capital that cost people their lives. And then he went about lying about it. Not for a day, not for a month, not even for a year. It has been 5 years now that Donald Trump has been spreading the big lie. It has been 5 years now that he has been poisoning our democracy by lying about the outcome of that election. We are 10 months out from the next election, and the rhetoric that is coming from him, the statements being made by his vice president and his administration, the policies being advocated by his Department of Justice should make all of us concerned about what is going to come next. As I record this video, we are in 80 cases around this country in 40 states trying to protect free and fair elections in 2026. That is more cases than all of the top big law firms combined. We got 60 lawyers. Some of these law firms, they make billions of dollars in revenue. They have thousands of lawyers. And most of those firms are involved in zero cases. Z-E-R-O. That's what they think about democracy. They're just bowing down to Donald Trump. They are bending a knee at every opportunity. In fact, they can't even stand up straight anymore. Look, I mentioned that I started Democracy Docket in 2020 because you needed good information about what was happening to democracy, elections, and voting in court, and we have been doing that work ever since. I do these videos because it is part of that work. So do me a favor right now and go ahead and subscribe to Democracy Docket for free. The link to do so is in the description of this episode and in the show notes, so do that right now. So let's begin with what Donald Trump said he wished he had done in 2020. Now, this was, as I mentioned, an interview he gave with the New York Times very recently. And what he said was that he wished he had sent the National Guard in to seize the ballot boxes. Okay, that's the language of the question. That's the language of the answer. He wished he had done that. Now, if Donald Trump wished he had done that in 2020, do you think he's not going to do it in 2026? I mean, to understand the answer to that, you have to understand why he didn't do it in 2020. He didn't do it in 2020, not because he didn't care. I mean, this is a guy who filed frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit, and then we all saw what happened on January 6th. So it's not like it was too far for him, right? There is no too far for Donald Trump. The big mistake that people on the left make is that they think there is a line that Donald Trump won't cross. Donald Trump will cross any line. They think that maybe there's a bottom that he won't sink beneath. Have we not learned? There is no level to which Donald Trump will not sink. So he didn't not seize the ballots because of some pang of conscience. He didn't seize the ballots because his own attorney general, his own Department of Justice wouldn't go along with it. His own White House counsel's office wouldn't go along with it. People in the White House would have resigned. We know that, right? Because some of them resigned after January 6th. We know that his own White House counsel wouldn't go along with it because of their own notes and their testimony. We know about the Department of Justice, again, for the same reasons, because of the January 6 hearings and the other information that came out afterwards. So Donald Trump didn't go forward with seizing the ballot boxes then because he didn't have the infrastructure of government behind him. So now let me ask you this. Do you think that any of that infrastructure exists now? Like, do you think there are those guardrails? I keep being told there are these guardrails. Where are the guardrails? We're driving on the highway. It's dark. The weather's bad. The lights on the car are out. The road's windy and it's steep. And everybody keeps telling me, don't worry, there are guardrails. And all I see is the end of the road to my left and to my right and a steep cliff. So don't tell me about the guardrails. The White House counsel wouldn't resign if Donald Trump tried to seize ballots in 2026. Pam Bondi, you think Pam Bondi would get in the way? Pam Bondi would sign up to be the one seizing the ballots. Todd Blanche, I mean, we're going to talk more about Todd Blanche in a moment. He's like the number 2 person in the Department of Justice. He should know better. He's a former federal prosecutor. He does know better. But that's what cowardice will do for you. But what about civil society? What about the corporate leaders? Where are they? What about the big law firms? I mean, I already told them they're not doing anything in court. Maybe they could just issue like a press release. Nope, not doing that. We got to have this conversation, you and I. We got to understand each other, where we're coming from. I'm going to do everything I can, and I need you to do the same. And we're going to end this episode by me telling you what you can do to be helpful in this fight. But I need you to do a couple of things. One is I need you to watch and listen all the way through to the end, because we're going to get to it, and I need you. The second is I need you to leave a comment, because I read the comments. I love to get the feedback. I want to know whether I'm hitting the mark or missing the mark, or there's a topic I should cover that I haven't covered, or you're done hearing about something. So please do me a favor and leave a comment. All right, well, he wants to seize the ballot boxes. I mean, he's going to want to do that. He wished he had in 2020. And he's not going to need the military to do it. You know, he's got the FBI. Kash Patel, you know, FBI director, wrote a children's book in which Donald Trump was the benevolent king. I'm not kidding. He actually wrote a book in which he literally listed an enemies list. I mean, this guy's out of the FBI. He made a enemies list that is the enemies list. So they're not going to get in the way. They're going to be facilitators of this. It's not just that, right? Because some of you are like, yeah, but they can't really seize the ballot boxes because they're all over the country, and the blue states will say no, and maybe in some of the red states will say no, and you know, and courts will get in the way. All right, fine. We'll come back to all of that in a moment. But that isn't the only thing Donald Trump said. Like, it's not bad enough that he told the New York Times that he wishes he had seized ballots, and that that's something we're going to have to obviously contend with in 2026. No, he then went on to tell Reuters that when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms. Well, that is not always true, but it's often true. Barack Obama had a tough midterms. Joe Biden actually did okay in the midterms. Donald Trump got killed in the 2018 midterms, so he knows something about that. But then what he said is, when you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election. We shouldn't even have an election. Now, why is he saying we shouldn't have an election? He's saying we shouldn't have an election because he's not going to win the midterms. Now, isn't that a telling admission? Later, he's going to say, we won the midterms, we won the midterms, we won the midterms. There was fraud, there was fraud, there was fraud. And that's why it looks like we didn't win. But he admitted now that when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms. He knows he's going to lose if we have free and fair elections in 2026. You can see it. You can see his process here. When you're an incumbent president, when I, Donald Trump, am an incumbent president, I don't win the midterms. Therefore, we should not have midterm elections at all. That is what he is telling us. Those are his words. Now, why is that so important? Because I ask you, has the legacy media walked you through this? Have they taken this to be a 5-alarm fire? Are you seeing on the front page of every newspaper day after day, are you seeing reporters confront Donald Trump with this quote in which he concedes he will lose the midterms because he is the incumbent president, but that he does not want midterms? Have you seen them, just like a dog with a bone in their mouth, not willing to give it up, go after this White House every day? No, you haven't seen that. They're not just not a dog with a bone. They're not even a puppy. They are not in the business of holding Donald Trump to account. They are not in the no fear, no favor business anymore. You know, if you grow up with that, you know, I'm sorry I harp on this, but you got to get that out of your mind, because if you think that's the information you're getting when you watch legacy media, you know, the networks, no, you're watching people who have shoveled money over and over again into the pockets of Donald Trump and his causes. If you're not hearing it from law firms, it's because they're doing the same thing. Now, Carolyn Levitt, who is Donald Trump's professional liar. Now, I know you're saying that could be a lot of people, but most of the people who lie for Donald Trump, they actually have a day job, you know, like prosecuting his political enemies. And then in between doing that, they lie. Carolyn Levitt is the White House press spokesperson or press secretary, whatever her title is. So like literally all she does is lie for the president.
The president was simply joking. He was saying, we're doing such a great job. We're doing everything the American people thought. Maybe we should just keep rolling. But he was speaking facetiously.
So let's just take this and try to parse where the joke is. I mean, it's not a joke that when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms. I mean, that's actually not a joke, right? That's like a pretty straightforward political analysis. So then he says, when you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election. Did that make you chuckle? Could you imagine Donald Trump telling a joke? Like, he's not a jokester, right? Like, Donald Trump has no, I mean, do you think he has a sense of humor? I mean, nothing about this presents as a joke. Nothing about Donald Trump saying this sounds like a joke. Reuters, which reported it, to their credit, they didn't say this was a joke. It's not a joke. He means it. Now, the good news is he can't cancel the elections. If you are out there posting on social media that Donald Trump is going to cancel the elections, you are doing Donald Trump's bidding. You are not part of the pro-democracy coalition. I'll just tell you right now, like, you can turn off the video, you can call me all kinds of names, you can say whatever you want about me, but Donald Trump's not going to cancel the elections. Donald Trump can't cancel the elections. Elections in this country are run by the states, not by the federal government, and certainly not by the president. The Constitution gives the states the power to set the time, place, and manner of elections for federal office. Congress, which Donald Trump is not, he's not Congress. I mean, sometimes it seems like he's Congress because Mike Johnson and John Thune are just little puddles under his desk. But there is still actually a Congress, and Congress can override those rules set by states, but only by legislation. So, good example of that is Congress set a uniform election day of the Tuesday following the first Monday in November. That is Congress overriding the states. But that's it, right? Like Congress doesn't set a lot of election laws and rules. And so the states will run elections and we will have elections. Donald Trump can't cancel them. But that isn't the right question. The question is, are they fair and free? If they can't be canceled, can they be made so unfair, so unfree, that they are the net effect of not really having elections? I mean, you have elections. I mean, Russia's got elections, right? I mean, but they're not fair and free elections. So Donald Trump doesn't want there to be fair and free elections because that's the closest he can come to there not being elections at all. Now, one of the ways he will make the elections not fair and free is by targeting his political opponents through the misuse of state power. Now, by political opponents, I mean literally not just people like James Comey and Tish James, who he does not like, who happen to be one way or another connected to politics, although it's not clear Comey is connected to politics. You know what I'm saying. But I mean more directly, right? Like the threats he is making against Democratic U.S. senators is a different category of political opponent. Targeting the governor of Minnesota and the mayor of Minneapolis, now that is going after, again, your political opponents. But I don't think it ends there. Hell, it's still January. He's got 10 more months to go after his political opponents in ways that will influence the 2026 elections. People running for office, people helping elect Democrats, people involved in the Democratic Party, people involved in progressive advocacy organizations that support candidates. Like, there are any number of ways he can target political opponents to have a really big impact on the elections. So how about this one? He targets voters and sends a message. If you don't want trouble with me, don't vote, or at least don't vote for Democrats. If you don't want trouble with me, don't endorse my opponents. Don't donate to Democrats, right? There's any number of ways he can use the prosecutorial power to make good on his efforts to prevent there from being free and fair elections. And as I mentioned, he took to the stage. I mean, the Washington Post says that democracy dies in darkness. Is there a less dark place than the stage in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum? I mean, literally, it's a lit up stage. There are lights shining all over this stage, while the world's corporate elite hobnob with each other and sit in the audience, while the world's leaders, heads of state all around the world, are there, while the networks and the legacy media hang on every word and cover it live. Is there any way that Donald Trump could be in a more well-lit place than when he took to the stage there and said that he wanted to break news? He literally said, I am breaking news.
The 2020 U.S. presidential election weren't rigged. It was a rigged election. Everybody now knows that. They found out. People will soon be prosecuted for what they did. It's probably breaking news, but it should be. It was a rigged election. Can't have rigged elections.
The President of the United States is standing before the world's corporate elite, the wealthiest people in the world, the most powerful people in the world. The world leaders are assembled. The cameras of the world media are focused on the president. They are hanging on his every word. There is live commentary going on blogs and on major newspapers. And he says that's probably breaking news, that people will soon be prosecuted in connection with an election that he is lying about having been rigged. You might think this would have been breaking news. I watched this. I went to the New York Times website looking for a breaking news banner. I went to the Washington Post website and looked for a breaking news banner. I thought, is there like a tape delay? I checked out the networks looking for the breaking news chyron, seeing if maybe they interrupted their regular coverage to break the news that Donald Trump just said he was breaking, that people will soon be prosecuted because he lost the 2020 election and refuses to admit it. It was nowhere to be found. Do you know who treated it as breaking news? Democracy Docket. Yeah, the news outlet I started in 2020 to warn all of you about what he was going to do in 2020. It's still around, except now it's got 22 people. It sends out daily newsletters. It publishes premium content. It publishes free content. It operates a website that is entirely free to anyone. You can go to democracydocket.com right now and check it out. It is free, the entire website. It broke this news that Donald Trump said was breaking news. So that's where we are. He is telling us what he is going to do. For those of you who remember from the 2016 campaign, when he said he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and his supporters wouldn't abandon him. That's essentially the words that he said. We didn't know that among the people who wouldn't be fazed were the business elite, the large law firms, the legacy media. I didn't count on them not caring. I understood, like, maybe he was right, maybe he was wrong about his supporters. But when Donald Trump takes to the largest stage in the world and says that an election was rigged when it wasn't, repeats that it was rigged when it wasn't, says that everybody knows it when in fact nobody with any common sense or any expertise believes it to be true, that, quote, they found out. Who the hell's the they? And nothing's been found out other than he lost. And then that people will soon be prosecuted for what they did. And everybody just kind of yawns and goes on. That's not right. You deserve better. You're too smart for that. The people in the media are too smart for that. But they've just decided that this is not the business they're in. They are out of the business of holding Donald Trump to account for his lies. They are out of the business of telling the truth about the 2020 election. They are out of the business of saying that prosecuting your political enemies in 2026, 10 months out from the next election, is wrong, and we will not let it go. Nope. They're in the, we will note that in a blog post, maybe in a tweet, maybe we'll do a short story on it, but it is not going to dominate our coverage. So that's what he said about prosecuting his political opponents. Now, I wish that were all. I wish this was just rhetoric and you know, you'd all say, well, you know, Donald Trump's a liar, maybe he's lying about all this, and maybe none of this will happen. I would tell you, you know, some of the worst advice we got, and I don't know where it started, but at some point, someone told us to take Donald Trump seriously, but not literally. That is terrible advice. People who told us to take him seriously, but not literally, were telling us in the aftermath of the 2020 election, oh, he's just mourning. He's blowing off steam. He'll come around. Remember all that? Remember the op-eds that you read by these people? Remember all the talking heads are like, oh, he deserves his day in court, but if he loses, there'll be a peaceful transfer of power. No. If you had taken him literally, you would have known, like I did, that what he was saying was he was never going to accept the outcome of the election. And if once you assume that he's not going to accept the outcome of the election, then the rest of it falls into place pretty naturally. So we have to take Donald Trump literally. But even if you're not sure about that, you're like, Elias, I'm not ready to go there. That's too big. It's too dark. I can't accept that right now. Let's look at what they're doing. Not saying, doing. The Department of Justice, under his control, is currently suing 24 states and the District of Columbia to access your most sensitive data. They actually want to access your most sensitive voter data in all 50 states. But some of the red states are voluntarily turning it over. But the states that aren't, mostly blue, some purple, they're getting sued. Because Donald Trump's Department of Justice wants to collect a national voter file with all of that information, your name, your address, Social Security number, signature specimen, some places, date of birth, every place you've moved, where you've registered, whether you vote by mail or in person, whether your ballot's ever been challenged or not, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you voted in primaries or skipped primaries. Very powerful data they want to collect. And the states that aren't giving them, they're getting sued. So my law firm and I, we're joining all those lawsuits. We are intervening in those lawsuits as defendants on behalf of pro-voting groups and individual voters to stop them. Because that's what has to happen, right? We have to stop them from collecting this data on everybody and weaponizing it against you. And that's when I say that there are no big law firms on our side. There are no law firms with these mega cap, revenues. None of them are in these cases. Zero. None of them. None in 24 cases. My law firm, 60 people, we're in all 24 of them. And, Paul Weiss, the collaborator, none. Remember when they said, this settlement's not going to change the pro bono work we do. It's not going to affect our commitment to voting and civil rights. There's kind of a dark joke to make there about what perhaps their commitment always was. But it's certainly changing their rhetoric. It's certainly changing their behavior. And not just Paul Weiss. I mean, lots of big firms. So they are collecting this data because if they want to make good, if Donald Trump wants to make good on his desire to upset the results or overturn the results or frustrate the results or subvert the results, you pick the word, of the 2026 midterm elections, you can't do that without knowing whose vote you want to disenfranchise, right? It's easy to say, well, he wants to disenfranchise voters, but the question is, well, like which voters? And you could say, well, he wants to disenfranchise Democrats, but then the question is, how does he know who the Democrats are? The voter file will tell him. He wants to disenfranchise, people who live in cities. Well, how does he know that? The voter file will tell him. Well, he has a theory that he wants to disenfranchise voters by challenging mail-in ballots, but he doesn't know which ones. The voter file will tell him that too. The voter file is the basic building block for this administration to engage in mass voter challenges, mass voter suppression, mass subversion. I know a lot about this because I've been fighting the Republican Party and its allies for damn near my whole career, where they have been using private information of this sort, information they gather from states, which is not the complete thing that DOJ is seeking, but it's enough that they've been using this data for these purposes. Some of you will remember going back to December of 2020, January of 2021, the Republican Party and its allies in Georgia challenged the eligibility of 262,000 Georgians to be able to vote in the runoff election for Senate, which is the election in which John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock became U.S. senators. This is when we flipped 2 seats in Georgia from Republican to Democrat. And in the lead up to that, Republicans and their allies thought one way they can affect the outcome here is challenge at scale, in mass. These are not voters they know. This is just spreadsheets, names on a page of all these voters. And we went to court. We won. A lot of political pressure put to bear. That was successful. And those mass challenges were almost all of them were disregarded. Georgia came back and changed the law to make it harder to defeat voter challenges and easier to submit them. That's what the Republicans are up to. I could go state by state. I could talk about Wisconsin. I could talk about Pennsylvania. I could talk about swing states, non-swing states. This has been the bread and butter of what I've been involved in against the Republican Party for a very long time. But it's a whole different thing if it's the actual federal government on the other side. Like, it's one thing for me to be out fighting fights against the Republicans and some right-wing lunatics. It's another thing when the people on the other side have the imprimatur of the U.S. government. They have the Department of Justice and virtually near unlimited resources, and they have the credibility and good faith that comes with walking into a courtroom saying, I represent the United States. Now, look, I have been arguing, and if you subscribe to Democracy Docket, you know, I have been arguing against these presumptions of good faith and presumptions of regularity that give that imprimatur to these DOJ lawyers, but they still have it. And so when Pam Bondi and her folks want to collect all this information, that's what I'm worried about. That's why we're involved in all these fights. That's why I am concerned that none of the big law firms are, because these are very resource intensive. And it's why I'm concerned the legacy media is not paying enough attention to this. Because if they collect this information and then they are challenging voters at scale, then after the election they are trying to disenfranchise voters, they are trying to throw out election results, they have a critical building block and a tool that they did not have in 2020, that they did not have in 2022, and which, again, private vigilantes may have on the right, but that the state won't use or hasn't used in the past. So that's what we're up against. We've got a president who says, maybe no elections, maybe should have seized ballot boxes, prosecute my political opponents, lie about past elections, demonize the opposition, threaten voters. Oh, and by the way, I've got the Department of Justice doing all of this stuff with voter files. So I've already said who's not helping, right? I mean, I've already said, like, big law, we can count them out. Corporate America, count them out. You know, I mean, I keep asking myself, how is it possible that corporate America could be watching what is going on and just turn a blind eye? I mean, I get it. A lot of you are like, of course they are. That's what I expected. Okay, I just got to say, you know, for all of their rhetoric about democracy, for everything that a stable liberal democracy does for profits, for the bottom line, it is unbelievable to me, or now it's completely believable, but it was unbelievable to me. Maybe I lacked the imagination that I criticize other people for having in voting, that they would just stand by and watch. I mean, just to digress for a second about Minneapolis, just Google the large corporations that are headquartered in Minnesota. It is an astoundingly large list. For a state that you don't necessarily associate with being corporate headquarters, it is the headquarters for a lot of really large corporations. Have you heard of any of them doing anything to aid the peaceful protests in Minneapolis and Minnesota? No. Like, they're just like out of the democracy game, whether that is free and fair elections, whether that is civil liberties, they're just like out of the game. You know, I remember in the mid-1980s, McDonald's in Ohio put voter registration sign-up forms on the back of their placemats. So you could literally go to McDonald's, flip over the placemat, fill out the information, and then turn it in, and that was your voter registration. Could you imagine if today, if all of the e-commerce sites said, we're going to help you register to vote? Yeah, right, they already got your information, right? They got a zillion things about you. We're going to pre-populate a form and let you submit your voter registration form through us, and we will send it into the state. Could you imagine what that would do for voter registration? Can you imagine if every large big box retailer and every coffee retailer, not going to say which ones, but just all those companies that have physical stores all over the place, grocery stores, said, you know, we're going to put ballot drop boxes in our facilities, right? You need to drop off your ballot. We'll put in a state that allows ballot drop boxes. We're going to put them in our stores or right in front. We're going to foot the cost of building those ballot drop boxes. What if the air delivery services said, yo, look, we know the post office is under strain. We know that, you know, there's a real issue right now, which many of you know about. I've done videos on it. I've written for Democracy Docket about it, about the U.S. Postal Service's changes, about how, like, they won't postmark ballots the day they come in, and it'll take a really long time. Well, like, what if the air delivery services said, you know what? If you've got a ballot, we will deliver it overnight. Just drop it off at our facility. Put it in one of our, you know, we'll pick it up at your home. Whatever it is we do, we will, and we'll get it to the place the next morning before 8 a.m. Just think about how different democracy would be if any of these large corporations gave a shit about democracy. If rather than sucking up to Donald Trump and shoveling money and making up bullshit awards and going to the White House and being used as props for his authoritarian regime, if rather than doing any of that, they said, you know what, let's take 1/100th of the money that we are shoveling into him in his pockets and his supporters, and we used it for democracy. Imagine how much good they'd do. Imagine how much healthier our democracy would be. Imagine if all of the mega conglomerate media organizations said, you know what, we're going to dedicate some of our airtime or some of our print or some of our internet, whatever it is, to just being pro-democracy, to just educating people about voters about voting. But we don't get any of that. We don't get any of that. And look, that's why we need independent media. That's why you all need to support nonprofit organizations that do voter registration and turnout. You need to support candidates that you believe in and make sure they have the resources, because we are on our own, everyone. We are in it together, so we're not individually on our own. But boy, the big institutions, they're not going to help save democracy. It's going to be left to you and to me. So this is what we need to do. You know, I told you I was going to tell you what I needed to do, but I needed you to submit a comment first. So if you haven't submitted that comment yet, now's the time to put it below. But here's what we need to do. The first thing we need to do is we need to look out for our communities. We need to make sure we are registered. We need to make sure our friends are registered. We need to make sure that our family are registered to vote. We need to make sure everybody in our community is registered to vote. And we need to make sure they know how to vote. Now, that may seem simple, how to vote. You know, polling places move, methods of voting change, the postmark, the post office change. Like, there's a lot of things going on. So I need everyone to become an expert in voting in your community. I need you to share that information with your friends, your family, your clients, your customers on your social media feeds. I need you to inundate the world with accurate information about voting. That's the easiest thing I need you to do. Beyond that, I need you to volunteer. Okay, I said already who's not doing the work. Well, that means you and I need to do the work. Like, my part of the work is easy. I show up in court, I litigate, I run a law firm that litigates, I run a law firm that represents Democratic campaigns and progressive causes, and I started Democracy Docket, a news outlet that provides you the news information analysis we've been talking about. I do these videos, I go on other people's podcasts, I go on television, I do everything I can. That's my part. But I need you to do basically the same thing. I need you to volunteer your time. And it can be a number of different things. You can volunteer directly for a campaign or a state party. You can volunteer for a local civic organization. You can volunteer for a nonprofit group that's in the democracy or pro-voting space. Or on your own, you can just become part of the infrastructure of elections. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, you can volunteer to be a poll worker. There is a shortage of honest poll workers in almost every jurisdiction. So contact your local county election officials, and they will almost certainly be willing to put you through a training and make sure you become a poll worker, someone who helps make sure elections run. If you don't want to do that, you can become a poll observer with any one of the various organizations, the nonprofit organizations that do that. You can do that in person, or you can do that with via phone and hotlines. If you can't do that, and for many of you that's like too far a step, how about just becoming your own volunteer for democracy? How about spreading good information? How about taking some of the content in this video and sharing it? How about going to the Democracy.go website and sharing some of the news articles with your social circles? How about going to state election official sites and sharing that information, or going to trusted groups that share accurate information about voting and share that, rather than doom scrolling, rather than sharing the information of this person who heard this from a friend or that. Go to trusted sources and share that information online, in person, through political campaigns, through nonprofit organizations. We just need everybody to be aware of what's going on. If you're able to do any of that, there's one more thing I need you to do. I need you to stand up. I need you to show courage. You know, the people of Minneapolis are showing tremendous courage right now. They are going out on the streets and blowing whistles in the freezing cold, holding cell phone cameras at great discomfort to themselves and risk to themselves and their families. It is very cold in Minnesota in the winter. But they are doing what they can do. They are doing what they in their lives have the capability of doing, which is they are bearing witness to what is happening in Minnesota. You can bear witness to what is happening in your community around democracy. How about you call your legislators, your state senators, your federal members of Congress, and tell them that you care about free and fair elections? How about that? That is a form of bearing witness, a form of volunteerism that makes a huge difference, because when elected officials hear from their own constituents that they care about something, it means they will care about it more. It also means that if you're an election official who might not care about free and fair elections or might want to do something wrong, you know people are watching. Go to your town council meetings. Go to your city council meetings. Go to, if there's a board of elections in your state and they have meetings, go to those, tune in. Show everyone that you are watching what is happening. And it is not okay. It is not okay that there will be voter suppression. It is not okay that Donald Trump wants to go after his political opponents. Do not cower in fear. Do not sit on the sidelines. I need you to all stand up right now and become part of a movement that is committed to free and fair elections in 2026. Because here's the thing, no matter what other issue you may care about, whether it is climate or it is immigration, whether it is women's reproductive health, or it is better paying jobs, we are not going to have any of those things in this country if we do not have free and fair elections. And it starts in 2026. If Donald Trump can steal the results of the 2026 midterms, when by all accounts, Democrats are going to do really well, it's not going to stop in 2026. He is counting on you not being engaged, not caring so much, not paying attention. So I need you to care. I need you to pay attention, and I need you to engage. So please, right now, take an action. Take just one action right now. Share this video online. Leave a comment here. Like this video. Subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to Democracy Docket. Go to some other independent news outlet that you trust, that you like, and support them. For free is fine. But do something right now as that first step. And then once you do that, tomorrow do one more thing. And the day after that, do one more thing. And before you know it, you'll be part of the movement that is fighting for free and fair elections in 2026 and doing everything you can alongside the rest of us who are doing the best we can, as imperfectly as that is, day in and day out. So I hope you like this video. I hope you subscribe to this channel. I hope you hit the bell to make sure you are alerted when there's new videos. And I hope you become a Democracy Docket free subscriber by clicking on the link below. I'll see you next time.